Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Commander, tough rules, and cool interactions, episode 186. Today's episode is going to take a look at one of the recently spoiled cards from the Sonic the Hedgehog Secret Lair, and yeah, I know that a lot of people are not fans of Universes Beyond, but WotC will eventually, fingers crossed, print a Universes Within version of these cards, and the effect on this one that I'll be covering today is quite powerful, as is really a lot of these. This card specifically, even cEDH players have been talking about it, so I figured it's worth talking about here so that players know what it's capable of if they encounter it in a game, and if they want to build around it, and also what it is not capable of doing. I've got a bonus question at the end, so fans of those, be sure to stick around for that. The card is Shadow the Hedgehog, and he has 3 abilities, but the one that we care about is his last one that says, each spell you cast has split second if mana from an artifact was spent to cast it. And that's what this episode will be focusing on, split second. What does it actually stop, what does it not stop, and some tricks that you can do to get around it. Let's start with the actual rule for split second and clear up a common misconception I see with it. The Comprehensive Rules defines split second in section 702.61a that says, split second is a static ability that functions only while the spell with split second is on the stack. Split second means, as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast other spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities. So it's a form of spell protection, kind of like a hexproof for spells in a sense, but different. But something I have seen and heard from other players is that it counters the whole stack, and that is not true, because the stack is a first-in, last-out system. Anything that was previously on the stack before the split-second spell was cast will still resolve as normal once the split-second spell has resolved from the stack. It does nothing to stop things from resolving, only things being added to the stack while it is there. And even then, it doesn't stop everything. CR 702.61a specifically prohibits non-mana abilities from being activated and spells from being cast, but there is more to that in the game than that, and it even has an additional rule to clarify this with CR 702.61b that says, players may activate mana abilities and take special actions while a spell with split second is on the stack. Triggered abilities trigger and are put onto the stack as normal, while a spell with split second is on the stack. So, now let's cover what is a special action, and then get into some specific examples of all these kind of things that you can use for tricks. We will find the section on special actions in section 116, and we'll find CR 116.1 that says, special actions are actions a player may take when they have priority that don't use the stack. These are not to be confused with turn-based actions and state-based actions, which the game generates automatically. And then there's a big rules list of the currently, as of this video, 12 special actions. We've been getting a lot of those lately, though. I think we've probably doubled the amount of special actions in the last 5 years or so. There's 12 currently in the game, but the main one that we care about for today is CR 116.2b that says, turning a face-down creature face-up is a special action. A player can take this action anytime they have priority. So this special action requires that you do have priority, but split second does not affect that in any way. It doesn't remove priority. So things like flipping a morphed or disguised creature can still be done. The most classic examples that we have of these, with morph being used in response to split second, would be cards like Willbender, Void Mage Apprentice, and Chrome Shell Crab to either counter a spell, often change the target of a removal spell that has split second, or swap creatures so that someone else's creature gets destroyed by a board wipe, or maybe change of controllership? Is that a word? Controllership? Ownership? So that it ends up making a target become illegal by not being controlled by an opponent or something like that at the time. Lots of reasons, and we have gotten more cards since these were printed way back in Legions, like Silmgar Spell Eater from Dragons of Tarkir, and more recently Boltbender from Markov's at Karlov Manor. And these all work for two reasons. One, flipping them face up, again, does not use the stack, and it's them being turned up face up that triggers them, which again, split second doesn't stop anything from being added to the stack like triggered abilities, just spells and non-mana activated abilities. So triggered abilities are in the clear. This means that you could flip your Void Mage Prodigy and Split Second doesn't stop that. However, the counterspell aspect of the Void Mage Prodigy is still shut down from it, as that is a standard activated ability and not a mana ability. So let's take a look at some other triggered abilities that could help you get out of a split second situation. One of the most common examples I can think of would be Counterbalance, which is an enchantment that says, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may reveal the top card of your library. If you do, counter that spell if it has the same mana value as the revealed card. So if your opponent controls Shadow the Hedgehog and uses a treasure or a mana rock to cast their 4 mana value Damnation, then your counterbalance could still be used to stop it from happening if you reveal a 4 mana value spell. If you control a Decree of Silence, that's another way to have a triggered ability that just straight up will counter that spell. But here are some crazier little tricks that require maybe a tad a little bit more effort to pull off. Perhaps you control a Hunting Grounds, which is a enchantment with a threshold ability that says, as long as 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, this enchantment has, whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. And perhaps you have creatures in your hand like Frilled Mystic, Mystic Snake, and Voracious Great Shark, which all have ETB type triggers to counter any spell or to counter an artifact or creature spell. You could also run something like Kira, Great Glass Spinner, that says creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. And this is similar to Ward, because again, Split Second doesn't translate into this spell cannot be countered, but it has been sort of twisted into believing that that's what it does because of the practical effects of what it does usually result in. So things like Kira and Ward, pretty good to run. Now, I will point out that there is one popular card with a very powerful triggered ability that will not work in this split-second type of situation. The card is Mind's Dilation, and it has a triggered ability that says, whenever an opponent casts their first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of their library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Now, the Mind's Dilation effect itself will actually trigger, but if you do happen to exile a counterspell or something with it from their library, well, you can't cast it. Yes, this spell is being cast via the resolution of another ability, which does give you permission to get around timing. However, getting around timing and a restriction that just straight up says can't, those are two different things. You can do some cool trickery to have your Mind's Dilation trigger, and while it's on the stack, you can then turn a morphed Void Mage Apprentice to counter their split-second spell, and then it will no longer be on the stack because of getting countered, and then you can let your Mind's Dilation resolve so that you can actually cast whatever spell ends up being exiled with the Mind's Dilation, which would be pretty epic to pull off such a sneaky little thing. Now, on to other aspect of things with Split Second that doesn't get stopped by Split Second. Activated mana abilities. The altars, like Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar, both have activated mana abilities on them that involve you sacrificing a creature as a form of payment. So a card like Altar of Dementia, well, that one doesn't work because it doesn't have any capability to produce mana. This means that you could use the mana abilities on those two altars that do work, or any other kind of thing that has you sacrificing like that, to sacrifice your creatures that end up causing triggers to happen. If your opponent is casting the split-second spell and they're at low enough life, you could even pseudo-counterspell them by draining them with effects that we see on things like Blood Artist to kill them off, and when they are killed off in the game, well, all the things that they owned or control at the time on the stack are removed from the game, like their split-second spell still waiting around on the stack. Maybe they're planning to do a split-second spell to protect their whole board and then follow that up with a split-seconded board wipe. Well, then you can use your altar to sacrifice your angry baby to instead wipe the whole board and put them on a more equal playing field. Another kind of mana ability that you could use is the one that we see on Scourge Familiar that says discard a card, add black mana to your mana pool. If you control anything that triggers upon a discard like Hashaton, Scarab's Fist, then you can discard a Guardian of Faith, and now you can make a token copy of that Guardian to protect your whole board by phasing it out, other than himself. Maybe you have some other kinds of discard triggers out, and you just happen to have a Circling Vultures in hand. It's a really random card, but if you're in a discard deck with a lot of discard triggers, it's actually really, really good. The Vultures is a unique card in Magic in that it has its very own static ability, giving it the special action to just discard it whenever you have priority. This is another thing that doesn't use the stack like other special actions. It almost looks like it would be updated in modern formatting to say discard Circling Vultures, do nothing, which is an activated ability. However, it isn't that. Again, it's a static ability granting it that special action. Pretty weird for sure. And now for the bonus question. Your opponent cast a Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System, or VATS for short, which is an instant with split second, and it says choose any number of target creatures with equal toughness. Destroy the chosen creatures. And they target your 10 creatures that are all 2/2 power toughness, and one of them happens to be a feral ghoul that says, whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then you also control Phyrexian Altar. So we have covered in this episode how even though VATS has split second, you can still use the altar as it's a mana ability. But can you use it in this situation to save all or some of the creatures, the 10 creatures that were targeted by the VATS? Maybe sacrificing one of your creatures removes a legal target and therefore breaking the whole VATS spell, or is there possibly something else that you could do? I look forward to seeing your answers down below. This bonus question, I've actually, we're going off script now, so that means things are about to get weird. I've actually wanted to make an episode just purely on this this VATS question. It's been one that's on my list for a very, very, very long time, so I figured now was a good time to do that. I just never felt like that was something I should cover an entire episode on, because VATS doesn't see a whole lot of play, but it really should. It is a very difficult card to get around because of the split second, and it's one of those that could be targeted removal or mass removal. Really, really good card. I don't even know how expensive it is, but I should probably trade or get more of those or something like that. I also did not include a section in here. No, I did not. I did not type it up. But yeah, if you guys are sticking around this long, I do appreciate it. I always like when people stick around for a long time. But I do really, really want to see any other kind of tricks and things that you guys can think of. Are there any other, like Savala, her ability to... her mana ability that is an actual mana ability, despite being something that you draw a card with. So is there something you could do that if you have things that trigger on you drawing a card? There's a lot of other tricks out there. I'm sure that there's a lot of really cool mana abilities. I actually have a buddy that goes to one of my LGSs. He made an entire deck built around trying to use mana abilities in these ways to pull off these cool, crazy kind of things. So I'm sure he knows a whole bunch of cards in his research for building that deck. But what about you guys? Are there any other cards that you guys can think of? Any triggered abilities for mana abilities? Any special actions, morph type creatures? I didn't do too much deep diving into some morph, but I did kind of in morph because I've known about those for a longer time. But disguise is more new. Maybe some shenanigans that you could do with manifest, but creatures that don't normally have morph or disguise probably are not going to have anything that cares about them being flipped up if they were manifested. But I don't know. Maybe you could find a way to flicker a creature with an ETB that has been morphed out, or I don't know. There's probably a lot of cool things. I'm going to stop going off script now. Let's get to the outro. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.